Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Treaty Talk. We're going to be previewing this Sunday's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final between Cork and Limerick. I'm delighted to be joined as usual by Matt O'Callaghan, and we have a special guest in Ciaran Carey tonight. We'll be going through the game, looking in detail. Make sure if you're watching at home, do get your comments in. Who do you think is going to win? Where will the game be won and lost? And just get any of your questions in and we'll stay in tune.
The question of the game you get out of it what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Ciaran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. There's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
I suppose I'll come to you first, Matt, as our resident on Treaty Talk. All-Ireland final week. It doesn't get much better, does it?
No, and it's something we'll never get tired of, Jack, because we were long enough now on All-Ireland final week bystanders. So, look, it's a very, very happy place to be. Third All-Ireland final in 4 years. And, now I will say, if I'm honest, that I really the excitement hasn't taken off to the same extent as 2018 yet anyway, but I suppose maybe some of the restrictions being in place might account for that. But look, it's something that Limerick supporters maybe are taking it a bit for granted now at this stage. Dare I be a bit arrogant about it, but look, we'll take it every year, Jack.
Yeah, we'll definitely take it every year. Ciaran, you all set? Have you a ticket and everything sorted?
Jack, just about got my ticket, and my phone is hopping all week. And my reply, my text and WhatsApp, it's straight simple. They're like hen's teeth. So when they hear that one, they tend to stop. Yeah, so come here, there was a serious demand there. And I suppose they're doing their best that they can. And unfortunately, I suppose we'd all love Croke Park to be packed, especially in All-Ireland final. It's unique, it's special. Everyone that Limerick play in the last number of years, it has its own qualities. And this particular one is no different, and as Matt pointed out, unfortunately the restrictions that are still in place probably slow to kick off. But I see there's a bit of momentum now this week, from yesterday onwards, no matter where I'm driving, you see the bunting, see the flags, see the teddy bear, and it's all talk. So it's nice to be caught up in the middle of the build-up.
Yeah, and I know it is a bit quieter this year, and look, it's obviously an awful pity that people aren't getting tickets, and for the 40,000 lucky enough to get there, it's still 40,000 more than we had last December at the end of the day, Ciaran.
It is, and you know what? I'd say that's probably why people would be slightly disappointed. The Premiership soccer just started last Saturday over across the pond, and whether it's a game was on Old Trafford or Stamford Bridge or Anfield, the capacity of each stadium obviously slightly different over there, but they were full to capacity. And I suppose anyone that's sitting down or saying, they're getting on with it in England, how come we're not doing it here? So there's a little bit of that going on as well. And, but unfortunately, that's the times we're living in, Jack. And I suppose, I'd imagine anybody that isn't going will be at home rather watching it or probably on in their local pub. So they're going to have a small bit of crack and a bit of support on it.
Yeah, and just talking on support there, Matt, I'll come to you with this one. It's Limerick.
Yeah, but
and Cork.
just can I take up Ciaran's point there?
It's
a very, very valid point, because I noticed it particularly last Sunday and Monday, unrest among the people and asking serious questions as to why, if they can have 75,000 in Old Trafford, like why do we have to restrict to 40,000 in Croke Park? And it certainly fueled something within people. But up to that, I thought, and practically, I suppose, in the last 2 days, and I suppose you'd agree with me, Ciaran, that there's a certain resignation among an awful lot of people at this stage that tickets just simply are not available.
Yeah, and the allocation, without a doubt, it's a given. And under normal circumstances, Matt, as you know, it's kind of difficult enough. But usually late in the week, a lot of tickets come back to the club. Unfortunately, this isn't the case this time. And there's allocations. Okay, Cork get a certain amount, Limerick get a certain amount, right? And obviously the corporate sector and the sponsor also will get a nice kind of slice of allocation of tickets. So, and I suppose a lot of them are going there also. So, as you rightly pointed out, I think a lot of people have resigned to the fact, okay, unfortunately, we'll stay at home, we'll watch in the box, or we'll watch in our local.
Yeah, but the level of tickets, Jack, that has been given to Limerick is massive in comparison with the level of tickets to the clubs in Cork. Like, the clubs in Cork are getting fewer than, in some cases, 30 tickets. Whilst we have clubs here getting 90, and we have some of the bigger clubs getting 140 and all that sort of thing. But I know clubs in Cork that are getting less than 30 tickets because, like, they have the same allocation as Limerick, but it's mathematics. They have a much greater number of clubs. What have they? 200 and something clubs, 260 something. So
yeah. That makes sense to Matt. Like, when you have that many clubs, it's going to be rare that one club is going to get 100, 190. So I suppose, as the man says, mathematically, they have to be seen to be as fair as they can, near enough to every club, irrespective of the status of the club.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't envy who is involved in the tickets. Look, whoever gets there, and we'll have 40,000 anyhow. But I suppose on the game, Ciaran, before we get into the final itself, we didn't speak to you since that semi-final, but it was probably probably the most complete performance over the course of 70 minutes from Limerick against Waterford. What did you make of it?
Yeah, very steady, very solid. I suppose I was looking at it from a tactical point of view that, Waterford, had played Limerick on a good number of occasions in the last number of years. At last year's final, the Munster final, and the year before that. So, they're well equipped with Limerick and have Limerick well fine-combed tactically how to set up. And I was kind of blown away that Waterford actually did the exact same thing. I was looking at the game, and my jaw was open, actually, because, okay, Declan Hannon was a button sweeper. And, if you're going to allow that, the opposition, you're going to be in trouble straight away. But not only was he sweeper, but Barry Nash was alongside him for lots of the game. So, I don't know, Waterford, in my opinion, are possibly better than that. But whatever system they appear to be playing, it just, when they come up and face Limerick for some reason or other, it just blown out off the face of the earth. Yeah, but from a Limerick point of view, very solid, very safe. Tom Morrissey, Flanagan probably has his best year. Tom Morrissey, very solid. The big one for me really on that day was, I suppose, the first time William O'Donoghue and Dara Donovan kind of owned in midfield. They dictated the game from start to finish as an 8-9. So, it's great to see that and give them that bit of confidence coming into the big one. So, there was a lot of ask. That one was a huge one for me.
Yeah, we'll definitely get onto that midfield battle in a while. But just coming to you, Matt, then obviously 24 hours after the Limerick game, we saw Cork giving their best performance of the year, and they probably beat Kilkenny twice. We only touched on it last week. What was your overall feeling after the Cork game and the aftermath when we knew we weren't attending?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to take up there on Waterford, I thought Waterford got an awful lot of things wrong. The main thing that I think that they got wrong was to come out all guns blazing, and it being their fourth game in as many weeks. Obviously, they spent so much gas in the first quarter like this, that there was very, very little to go around for the other 3 quarters of the game, and that's the way it panned out. And if you want a team to punish you in those circumstances, it's Limerick. And it was a Limerick team that was competent on the day, was efficient on the day, and I suppose carried on basically to a certain degree, but maybe not to the same level as they showed in the second half of the Munster final against Tipperary. But I certainly was impressed in the second semi-final. But when I was preparing the preview for the second semi-final, an awful lot of doubts about Kilkenny hit me. And I will tell you why. And this is no disrespect to anybody. They share the league, and as we know, the league practically ran into the championship this year. So, victories over Antrim, Dublin, Laois would be regarded in Kilkenny terms as routine. and they beat Wexford. They got a real test. Their biggest test in the league was against Clare when they had to travel to Ennis, and they failed that one. Wexford took them to extra time in the Leinster Championship, and they beat a depleted Dublin side in the Leinster final. So I was doubtful about the credentials of Kilkenny. The only thing I said to myself, right, Cork have a very, very bad record in recent semi-finals. They had only won one, and that was in 2013 against Dublin. And Cody was the old hand at winning semi-finals, as we rightly know from 2019. But the way Cork responded, having succumbed a 6-point lead, which they seem to be home and hosed, and to come out in extra time in the manner in which they put the game to bed, it contrasted very sharply, Jack, with the manner in which they came out in the extra time against Limerick in 2018, when an injured Seamus Hannity had to come back onto the pitch. Like what we saw was Cork manifesting a certain depth, a certain strength in depth, and a certain and we've spoken about it about Limerick for long enough. A certain strength on the bench from Cork. Like we had, of course, Shane Kingston had an incredible introduction, and Alan Cadigan. Like these guys got 10 points between them from play. Like so, I was impressed. I was impressed, particularly with the way Cork saw out the game.
Yeah, and Ciaran, how much will Cork, as a kind of a young side, many of them being their first All-Ireland, how much will they take from probably throwing away the game, coming back into it and winning in kind of under difficult circumstances?
Yeah, and Matt's points, they're all very valid. And actually, I stayed up Croke Park actually to watch that game. And I watched it very closely, and I was seriously impressed because I saw him, the last time I saw him was at the first day against Limerick. And, I could see, compared to the first day against Limerick, a lot of areas where they struggled and a lot of areas where tactically they got it wrong. And I'll just make one point. Patrick Collins against Limerick the first day put Cork, his own team, under severe pressure with the puck outs. Now, every second puck out, and he was hurt and punished for every one of them. He didn't do it once against Kilkenny. So obviously that was confronted. He was set down and obviously told from now on going forward, if we're going to go short, this is the way we're going to go about it. So I suppose the first thing I'm saying, they're extremely a lot more organised from the first day we played them. And if you go back to the first time that we played them, we underperformed that day. We whipped up 4 subs that same day, if my memory serves me right. Aaron Gillan, Gerard Hegarty, Flanagan and Tom Morrissey. That has never happened before, but that'll show you the bit of pressure we were under that day. And in fairness to Cork, my memory serves me right, Jack O'Connor had a powerful first 20 minutes, and then Brian Finn babysat him for the rest of the hour. Dara Fitzgibbon hurled well, all right, that day for Cork, he had a super game. Other than that, Cork were poor. Limerick on the day, as we know, also poor, but we got 2 goals and got us across the line. And I suppose the point I'm making is it's a different Cork team from that time to now watch them last week, and I have to say I was blown away by their performance. By the match itself as a neutral, it was a great game, outstanding game for neutral to be sitting down watching it. And we have to be on the full of our head for this one, because they have forwards, and it's going to be very interesting because Cork will be looking for space. They'll be looking for grass, for the Jack O'Connors, for the Patrick Horrigans, for Kingston, for Harmony. We'll be doing the exact same for Flanagan, Aaron and Casey. So it's going to be very interesting how this is going to plan out Sunday. And, I suppose it isn't going to be as comfortable as it was in the last 2 ones. This one is a different animal. It's a different team. And I suppose the uniqueness of it, Limerick's road, to get here was Cork, Tip, Waterford, Cork again, all Munster teams. So that in itself is unique if you kind of cross the line and win an All-Ireland. So as I said, it's unique for lots of reasons. But as our Ireland finals go. I suppose I was a lot more confident in 18. I was extremely confident last year, and I suppose I'm slightly warier this time because we're playing a different animal with a lot of good players.
Yeah, and Matt, coming to you, what differences do you see between the Cork team that lost to Limerick in the Munster semi-final and the team that beat Kilkenny in the semi-final?
I agree. I agree with what Ciaran's analysis of it there was, and I certainly would be. I wouldn't share the same level of confidence that I had going into the previous All Irelands as this one. I think this is going to be a right close one, and what has happened in the league and what has happened in the Munster semi-final will count for absolutely nothing on Sunday. It'll be totally different. Like just to give you a small bit of a background to it, when I was reflecting on it today, like this, what we're seeing in these days and these weeks is the reawakening of a hurling giant. You take it. It speaks for itself when it's a fact that Cork are going for the first senior title in 16 years. On Saturday night, they're going for a first minor title in 20 years. Like, they haven't won the league since 1998. Now, they have won back-to-back under 20s in the last 6 weeks. But prior to that, they hadn't won the competition since 1998. And we're talking about one of the top, along with Kilkenny. We're actually talking, you're talking about hurling aristocracy here, and there is a revival in Cork, and I think that's going to feed into the whole thing, and confidence is very, very, very high. Now, obviously, John Kiely and Paul Kennard will have their homework done in Cork, and will certainly make life difficult for them. But I agree totally with Ciaran. This is a most totally different animal to what we saw in other years, and indeed to what we saw in Thurles that evening. I shot 20 wides on the evening, and we still won by 8 points. But there's a narrative going around here. There's a narrative going around, and I've been listening to it going around the county, and I've been seeing it on social media. And to me, it's a very, very dangerous one. That Limerick are home and hosed. Like, this is the 63rd time that Cork and Limerick have met in the championship. Cork have won 44. There have been 4 draws. So, right, the weight of tradition is against you as well. Now, like, I asked the question of John Kiely at the press evening, and he dismissed it, and probably rightly so, because this team has gone where other teams, where other Limerick teams even didn't dare to tread, So, but I agree with Ciaran. This is anything but a done deal.
Yeah, it definitely isn't anything but a done deal. And I think your stat there, you kind of broke for a minute, but it was over 40 wins for Cork out of the 63. Just for anyone watching, make sure to get your questions in. I have one here for you, Ciaran, from Raphael. He says, where did you get the T-shirt? For anyone wondering out there.
Raphael, I come here now. I'm flattered. I'm absolutely flattered that he's extremely concerned about Ciaran's T-shirt here now in the show. So actually, you can tell Raphael, I think I might have bought that about 10 years ago on holidays, and I still have it.
I think it's as iconic already as Matt had.
You reckon?
Just a few more. Katrina Hanley says, just throws out the Limerick flags. I asked who they thought they'd win. John Paul Curran says Limerick by 6 points. PJ Carroll, Limerick Abu. Thomas on YouTube says Cork won't be easy, and they definitely won't be easy. And you talk about confidence there on Lee's side, Matt. But Ciaran, for Limerick, for this group of Limerick players, and Donald O'Grady described them as a special bunch. A third All-Ireland in 4 years, going for a third All-Ireland in 4 years, a third final in 4 years. Like, what separates them from Limerick teams we've seen in the past? Because we've seen how hard it is to actually win one, not to mind go for 3 and 4.
Yeah, and I suppose my answer to that is fairly simple, right? You've different generations and you have different teams in different eras. And the hurling and the training and the science is totally different. So to be fair, I don't think it's not like to compare them. But this particular bunch, now, if you want my honest opinion, probably should be going for a 3 in a row if we want to call a spade a spade. You know, and, you know, they are a special team. And even Cork are good. And even everything that myself and Matt are in agreement of with Cork and their pace and up front and a lot more organised compared to what they were. You know, we are still a serious outfit, you know, and, you know, this bunch, you know, are in another final. And I know for myself, and it's even when you're winning championships with your club, you know, that taste, there's always a taste of more. And the squad is still in its prime. And, you know, if anything, their experience this year, especially against Tipperary, to come back from that and to go through and win the match in the fashion they did, that in itself is going to galvanise the squad straight away. So even if Cork bring their best, I still think we've that much power and that much experience to kind of rely on the last number of years that will get us across the line. But it could be like, and if you look at the year in itself, myself personally, I thought it was an outstanding year championship. And I know the whole thing was kind of done kind of short, which was there was a few super games. This final possibly has the potential to be a classic if it kind of goes into cards as the plan. But even saying all that, I still think we're still plenty good enough to cross the line and win it.
Yeah, we're definitely plenty good enough. And I suppose I want to put it to you, Matt, about just the idea of pressure. Cork, obviously, there is pressure on Lee's side. 16 years is a big famine for Cork. But in the same token, there's been so much made of this Limerick side that if they were to lose and you only win 2 out of 4 with that squad, like there is a pressure on Limerick, even though they are champions.
Yeah, well, of course, going into any final, there's pressure, Jack, and I suppose in the circumstances, you know, from that point of view, talking about back-to-back titles and all that sort of thing, you know, you're on the threshold in Limerick terms of mortality, you know, so that that certainly brings its pressure, but equally there is pressure in Cork. Let's not forget that, because like they won the under-20 last night, were they to win the minor on Saturday night, and there's an awful lot of talk going around Cork this week about the Grand Slam and all this and what have you, you know, and that in itself would bring a certain amount of pressure come the weekend. But there's going to be there is pressure in Limerick, but we have seen in the past the way we have responded to them. And Ciaran is right. I think one of the great traits of this team in the immediate aftermath of winning the All-Ireland final last year, all right, they had proved the point that they weren't just a one-year wonder. For most of them, it was 2 All-Irelands, a couple of leagues and all that sort of thing. But they didn't seem one iota or one bit satisfied. They just wanted more. And they want to keep pushing out pushing out the barrier all the time. And I think that is one of their great characters, and it's one of their great strengths.
Yeah, and there's plenty of strengths there. And I suppose I have a comment in here, lads. I'll just throw it to you. Ciaran, you were mentioning it. Would you start your best team if you were the manager of Cork? And I suppose that's just to do with the point of what to do with Shane Kingston. Obviously, started from the bench against Kilkenny and came on and scored 7 points. Do you need finishers, or do you start with your best team and give you the best chance for the 70 minutes?
Okay, I'll probably answer that now, but I'll answer slightly as if I'm from Kerry. I'll answer it backwards. My phone is ringing out the same time as we're talking, but forget about that. Now, Shane Kingston, to be fair, you know, I was absolutely delighted for him last week, right? And I suppose the last number of years, he has been showing a little glimpse of that. But unfortunately, if his performance dropped any little bit, you know, his dad is manager. So, and I suppose his dad felt, you know, he had to whip him. And I suppose he might give me probably an extra 10 minutes to get into the game. So you had that dynamics going on. But what he did last week, you know, I have to say, you know, watching him, he was explosive. He's a big bull of a man, serious pace. And, you know, he's after a few tough old years by coming off and starting to be taken off. So deep down, I was actually thrilled for him. But to answer your question, would I start my best team in an All-Ireland final? I think the answer to that is kind of self-evident. Of course, you'd start your best team, but it's a squad game. You know, Matt mentioned Alan Cannigan the last day. He came in, looked very dangerous. Cork squad is after getting very strong, and I suppose Matt made a huge point there with the Cork underage structure. For the last 2 or 3 years, They've been nibbling away nice and quietly, because I watched their under-20s now 3 years ago, and it was down in Parky Ring, and I was fairly impressed with what I saw. I said, right, whether they're winning All Ireland or not this year, I could spot 4 people that would be plenty good enough for senior. It isn't always about winning the 20s or always about winning the 19s. If you can get 3 or 4 and the conveyor belt is moving, that's good. So they will have that momentum, number one. And I suppose the other 2 points I make about Cork, the other big advantage they possibly have now also is the Donal O'Grady factor, right? He's involved with him. He's in the back room, and he was involved in Limerick. Totally different time, different scenes. So I don't think there's any major learning there. But for the last 3 to 4 years, he has been fine-tuning and I'd say scrutinising and taking the Limerick squad apart for hours, I'd imagine, because he's a bit of a guru in his own little way, and he's a bit of a fanatic when it comes to the tactic side of it. Hence the reason why Cork are after getting so organised. Their goalie number one, and even if you look at them, look at their 6 defenders last week. It was keep possession, unless there was something on, didn't go with it. So it's very similar in a way. But the big one for Cork, really, and I suppose a lot of neutrals and a lot of people wouldn't get this. You'd only get this as a player for playing them for so many years. Even when Cork are kind of underperforming or going through a bad spell, they still think in their own mind they're good enough to beat you. Now, if you can add the momentum and the confidence and get into an All-Ireland final, that will give you a level of their arrogance where it might be for the final. So they will be dangerous. But, if we're on the full of our health, I wouldn't mind it, but they will be dangerous, I know.
Yeah, and coming to Matt on the Shane Kingston point, and I suppose Alan Cadigan and Robbie O'Flynn and Shane Barrett and a few more, their team isn't as settled as Limerick. What would you do with regards to the starting team if you were in the Cork camp?
Well, Shane Barrett started, and I was someone that advocated that he deserved the starting place, and I suppose it's fair to say that he didn't grab it with both hands, especially when we saw what came off the bench in terms of Shane Kingston and Alan Cadigan. So, look, Ciaran has made a very good point there, Jack, because Cork forwards were never Cork's problem. Even in their darkest days, they always had forwards, but they've had uncharacteristic defensive frailties for a number of years now. And I think to see where Donal O'Grady has put his stamp in and his fingerprints are all over their defensive strategy, their defensive structure, and probably their defensive personnel. When Damien Callahan cried off against Clare, it was a huge leap of faith to put Robert Downey in at full back. And the latest that I have seen about Robert Downey is he's been hotly tipped to be the all-star fullback, but we'll know that after Sunday. But it will tell you how he has adapted now. Whether there might be an element of luck, because fullback has been a problem for Cork for over a decade. Defence has been a problem for Cork, but they seem to have that rectified. And but I would never worry. I would worry playing, but if I were a Cork man, I would rarely worry about their forwards, because Cork always produce pretty serious forwards, and we can see again now that there is more of that in that. There'll be a lot of head scratching done before they will name their starting 15. And the contributor there, and Ciaran says start with your best team, and I would agree totally with that. But I'd say from what transpired in the semi-final, will fuel thoughts into Ciaran Kingston and his selectors' heads into will we keep a bit in reserve for the home straight?
Yeah, but I think for Cork, obviously we've seen Robbie O'Flynn from the start in every game. But I think if Kingston was to come in, Robbie O'Flynn would come out, and if you had Robbie O'Flynn coming off the bench, it's not much of a difference. Another explosive player for Limerick. Do we know our 15? Like John Kiley will obviously name it on Friday evening, but will there be any changes to the Waterford team? Do you think, especially Peter Casey's red card rescinded?
Funny enough, no, I actually think the Limerick team that started against Cork the first day, right? I think there probably will be only one change. It could be the same team, bar the full back. So Richie English started that, Dan Morris didn't. So add Dan Morris to that. then it's the same team that Cork played. And obviously they might get a bit of confidence in that too. So we played them the first day, we nearly got the same team, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but you mentioned Robbie O'Flynn there. He's another serious player, actually, I have to say. A serious athlete. Watched him last week up close and personal. So they have a lot of them. But to be fair now, right? To be fair, traditionally, in the last number of years, this squad, when they came across Cork, they were able to deal with them. And I suppose the mantra we should be playing now, really, I suppose, calling a spade, is to still have trust in the process that these guys are still capable of going out. Even though Cork are slightly better big time, but still we need to be back our lads and trust them that they can go out, do a back-to-back and, pick up their third All-Ireland medal.
And you're talking about trust there. We've mentioned Jack O'Connor and Patrick Horgan probably in depth, and they're probably the two most dangerous Cork forwards this summer. Matt, will they be assigned man marking roles, or will it be a case of who they pick up?
There may be a man marking situation in that. I would imagine Jack O'Connor is absolutely he has been the sensation of the summer. There's no question about it, and he gave us little cameos of it last year when he was coming on sort of in a big part and all that sort of thing. But certainly Horgan and O'Connor, they will be the two that possibly it'll be whoever they'll go in on. Will Dan Morrissey pick up Patrick Horgan if Patrick Horgan's name full forward? Jack O'Connor be picked up by Sean Finn? I wouldn't have worries on any of those two scores if I'm honest. And I honestly think that Ciaran touched it at the very outset now about the difficulty that Patrick Collins was under, particularly with the puck out in the Munster semi-final. I think Limerick are capable of visiting the same problems for him now, and to press forward on the puck out. Don't allow the shot puck out where possible, because I saw it against Kilkenny and on a number of occasions they built momentum from the back and worked it up through the lines. But I think that Cork should be made earn winning their puck outs and in all areas of the field. So I think it's very, very important that Patrick Collins's options are closed down, and that Cork will have to win their puck outs that there's going to be none of this short stuff and building from the back and running and all that sort of thing. I think that's something that Limerick have to counteract.
Yeah, and I think just one sec, Jack, just to follow on from that, and actually I think it'll be possibly both sides. I'd say they'll might allow the first puck out on both sides, but then the squeeze will be put on. Now, and in fairness, you could talk about the Cork six forwards, which we are. And funny enough, as Matt was talking, I'd have to say, watching our six defenders this year, the six of them together as a unit, I'd have to say it's probably as a unit, 'tis their most consistent and their best year. If you go through them all, one for one and man for man. Barry Nash, outstanding this year. Very unlucky to get an All-Star last year. I didn't tip for an All-Star. Okay, probably made a small mistake not starting Dan Morrissey. That's fine. He's after slotting in there, steadying the ship, top class. Okay, Brian Young Finn mightn't be as dynamic as last year, but still doing his job as a cornerback should do. And the three boys in front in speaks for themselves. They're commanding. So as a unit, the six of them, they're probably having their best year as a defence unit together. So, and when I mentioned trust in a while ago, I suppose trust the system that these six guys are capable of. Whoever comes in, that's your man. And I suppose if there's going to be any man for man marking, and it's going to be coming from the Cork point of view, tactically, if Cork get it right, they'll want to nail that. But the big one for me really is as follows. If Cork hasn't a player and designated a player on Keane Lynch to rattle him for the day, which it's going to be highly unlikely, but that's what they'll be trying to do. But Limerick will also prevent that. That's the big one. They'll be trying to do that, and you can be kind of picking out who they will do it. Will it be a hurler? Will it be a tall guy? Will it be sticky? My own personal opinion, dear, it doesn't really matter who's good to put on him, because he's having an outstanding year this year. But from the Cork point of view, they'll probably think if they can get that right and tactically, they're probably there with a chance.
Yeah, and I'll put it to Matt, Ciaran, because you obviously know Keane inside out from Parswell, and obviously as your nephew. But Matt, like you have to stop Keane Lynch somehow. But how do you stop him? Like, are you taking a player away from a game, trying to stop him, because more than likely they won't be able to lay a glove on him?
Well, Ciaran listed a number of options that might be available to stop him, and you know how I feel about Keane Lynch. I've said it often enough here in this podcast. I honestly think that Keane Lynch is just unstoppable. What you've got to do is you've got to try and limit his influence. Like if you think that you're going to put him out of the game or any of that sort of thing, it's not going to happen. His movement and how he can get around the place and all that sort of thing, like it poses an absolutely huge problem for Cork. And of course, if somebody stumbles someday on a formula to control or contain Keane Lynch, certainly, it'll put Limerick under an awful lot of pressure. But it has been tried for how many years now? 3 or 4 years. Like, this guy is phenomenal. I know he's your nephew, Ciaran, but this guy is simply phenomenal. Like the level of consistency that he has shown over the years, the level of influence, and he's at his best when you're in the trenches, which is a huge, massive thing to say about somebody. He's at his best. I honestly don't know what Cork will do. It's key. It's key. Definitely, it is key. Were they to contain him, we would be on the back foot. They would be a long way towards ending 16 years, but I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I think Keane Lynch is just someone that will stump everyone, and he's probably been John Kiley's key lieutenant ever since 2015, 21's All-Ireland win. He was at centre forward there. He was obviously midfield for the first All-Ireland win, back to centre forward, and like, I think Keane, you're just gonna have to do your best on him and try and limit his influence. And as you said, Matt, he's seen most when we're in the trenches. When Limerick are going well, you don't see that much of Keane Lynch because he does all the easy things so well. But when the back's against the wall, Keane Lynch comes to the fore. Another player I think Cork will have to plan for is definitely Seamus Flanagan, who is having definitely his best year for Limerick, and I think is a shoe-in for an all-star. Robert Down, we mentioned earlier in the pod. Do you think he's capable of picking up Flanagan, Ciaran?
I honest, Jack, in the modern game at inter-county level, you can take Keane Lynch as a fullback, or you can take the greatest fullback that ever played. In the modern game, no matter how good you are as a fullback, if there's space given to an inter-county forward, you're going to be hurt. I'm saying that in one hand, right? But I'm also saying then, right, and I'm kind of, and I could say this now about a lot of defenders in the last number of years, okay? And you're watching games and you're watching matches. You're watching certain players and you can anticipate what to do before they hit the ball. All I can say is as a defender, when I was playing, I'd be where the ball is. And I wouldn't be waiting for the strike and watch the forward go. So it's going to be a huge battle. Seamus Flanagan is having an outstanding year. Now, your man, I have very good time for him. He kind of fell into that position fullback through default, and if it comes anyway 50-50, he will be probably a favourite to win it. But all Limerick have to do really here is to utilise Seamus Flanagan the way he's been utilised this year, and if that is the case, he is going to cause the fullback serious pressure. No different the case in O'Callaghan. If the ball is coming in 60-40 at all, they're going to create and they're going to cause harm to Cork. But the big one here is, are Cork going to put the squeeze under the fence to prevent that?
Yeah, I'll get on to the defence in a minute. Just there's a question here from PJ Carroll. Ciaran, if you were marking Keane, just say you were centre back and he was centre forward, what would you do?
Well, I'll be honest now, I have no notion. I know what I do myself personally, but I have no notion in educating anybody here tonight how I go about babysitting him. And I'm going to leave it at that.
We'll leave it at there. You talk about putting the squeeze on the Limerick backs, and in Kyle Hayes, Declan Hannon and Diarmaid Byrnes, it's two ways. So you mentioned the puck outs earlier, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this, Matt, that Patrick Collins probably doesn't really have an option long with them three boys there. But they're often the start of attacks. They're so accurate. The Derek Burns diagonal ball, and even Kyle is starting to do it now. So just from a defensive point of view for Limerick, can Patrick Collins look up and be comfortable to go long, or is he forced to go short with the men that he's facing?
That's the point, and that I was making, that you have to close down his options, and I think if he goes long and certainly goes into the into the Limerick half back line, delivers it into that Limerick half back line, it's playing into Limerick's hand. But Ciaran touched it there as well, and if we were to see a repeat of their performance in the All-Ireland semi-final at midfield of William O'Donoghue and Dara O'Donovan, who played as out and out eights and nines, that will that isn't an option either. So I honestly think that one of the keys from a Limerick point of view anyway is to ensure that the options to Patrick Collins from the puck out are as limited as humanly possible. And
then on the opposite foot, Matt, the going forward ball from Kyle and Dermot that we were so accustomed to. Like, how do Cork put the squeeze on so deep into the Limerick half?
Yeah, well, we've seen how they have, that they're trying to replicate it. They're trying to replicate it in particular with Tim O'Mahony, who's a huge man, similar to Kyle Hayes, and we saw the way he got up the field and got the goal against Dublin, wasn't it? He got the goal, and his instinct is to go forward, and that's I think that is probably their best bet, to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, and Ciaran, that middle third battle, from a Cork perspective, the Limerick obviously half forward line and half back line are so important. Is it wise to squeeze up on them or to drop deep?
From whose point of view now?
For Cork, we'll say, because they know how important this that Limerick's half forward and half back line is. Is it good for pressure?
And I suppose, Jack, pressure is the word, and I suppose if you're going to apply pressure, you have to do it in a disciplined fashion. So discipline is going to be huge here, and the work rate out of each set of forwards is going to be massive. It depends how they're setting up, Jack, really, and I suppose Cork inevitably are actually trying to do what Limerick are doing for the last 3 to 4 years. Believe it or not, if you're studying it properly and sitting back, that's what they're trying to achieve. And they're putting a few giants as well across their halfback and in certain areas, And if you look at the Waterford game, William O'Donoghue was on Jamie Barron, right? And you're talking about David and Goliath here, and that was left like that for the hour, and William O'Donoghue was winning the battle. So, bottom line here, this could take a life of its own, but definitely Cork's half-back line. Well, the one fella that doesn't go up a whole pile, and he's a serious pair of hands, and he's a serious hurler, and he's got poetry in motion, and actually he's getting better. Was poor the first there, is Mark Coleman centre-back. He can pin a ball left or right, he'll do it on the run, and he'll do it at his ease. He'll give the exact same ball as Dermot Byrne gives when he stops, when he gives a scud missile. This guy will do it just tipping and tapping, and he'll spot it. He's a very good brain. So it'll be interesting there. I'd imagine anyway that Mark Coleman won't be taking Cian Lynch on. They'll have someone designated to do it, and Mark Coleman will be staying in the pocket, and he'll be their go-to player, similar to Declan Hannon. To be fairness to Declan Hannon, he's been on more ball this year than he has been the last 4 years. He's outstanding this year. So tactically, he'll come down to Jack, and I suppose if you're trying to implement your tactics, you have to have serious concentration levels, number one, and number two, you have to be very, very consistent in doing it. All it takes is one for the tactics to drop. A small little drop in your work level or your work rate, tactics has gone down to 50-50.
Yeah, and I suppose we spoke about the forwards and the backs, but at the very start we mentioned Dara Donovan and William O'Donoghue, and they'll probably be taking on Luke Mead, and it'll probably be between Conor Cahalane and Dara Fitz, they'll drop in and out of there. If Limerick can get a hold of whatever two Cork they face, like they did Jamie Byrne and whoever was in midfield for Waterford the last day, could that be the win and losing of the game again this week, Matt?
It could. It'll be a very, very important factor, and that's the point I was making there a while ago about particularly about the puck out. That the half forward line, if he was to go long, or if it were to be dropping around midfield, if Darragh O'Donovan and William O'Donoghue were in the same form that they were against Waterford, they'd have very, very little purchase to get there. You see, Cork have a doubt about Jar Millerick. Now that could upset things a bit because, and Ciaran is right, that Mark Coleman is unlikely to pick up Cian Lynch. I think Jar Millerick could be the man that would be tasked with that job if he's past fit. Now, I understand he's in a race against time to be fit for the game, and the speculation is then who will come in. It probably looks like that it's going to be Owen Cadigan, possibly, who played against Limerick in the first round, as far as I recall, and unless you must remember that Cork have two very decent defenders on the bench in Sean O'Leary Hayes and particularly fit again Colm Spillane. Whether they try and rejig the forces in the absence of Jar Millerick, but I don't think it's clear cut. I couldn't see Sean O'Donoghue being moved out to accommodate into the half back line to accommodate Colm Spillane. Niall O'Leary has a tendency to go forward. He's a cornerback. He's got a couple of points in the championship so far. He won't certainly have the same latitude to go forward against the Limerick forwards as he had against what he has met up to now. But a lot will depend on the fitness or otherwise of Jar Millerick as to whether he will make it or not. I cannot see Mark Coleman taking up Cian Lynch because to completely, not completely, but it would seriously impact on the influence that Mark Coleman tends to exert on the games were he to be taken up by Cian Lynch. And, how successful would he be is another question. So, it could be a double whammy were he to take him up,
Yeah, and I suppose we spent the bones of 45 minutes now talking about the varying battles and things. But Ciaran, if you had to call it, where will the game be won and lost, and who will be climbing the steps of the Hogan stand?
Well, Declan Hannon will be climbing the steps. That's number one. And obviously, and you can be talking tactics till the cows come home, right? And it's vital because it's huge. It's huge in the final. It's huge with Limerick. And unless you can come up with a strategy that can derail them and your own strategy to implement on the day, you waste your time. So you'll have all that at play, which is fine. But you still have to get the fundamentals right for the hour and 15 and 20 minutes, right? And, this is a huge week for any player, psychologically, getting himself up for it and, keeping the cool, keeping it nice and calm and waiting for the off. And I suppose where it's going to be won, really, in my opinion, is going to be, I suppose, the quality of ball, whichever side has probably the upper edge, giving it into their forwards, possibly is the team that's going to come out on top. And to be fair, as I said earlier on, and we complimented our 6 defenders, but to be fair, you could say the same about 5 of the forwards. So that'll tell you how well we are going. Like, Delan is flying, Flanagan best season, Casey extremely sharp, Morrissey speaks for himself, Cian Lynch centre forward. Okay, Garrod is coming, finished very strong. So he's the big game player, so he'll come as well. So as a team and as a unit, and the later the championship was going on, actually more of an influence, thank God, which was great to see, our subs had on the game. So our bench is getting stronger as the year's gone on as well, compared to what it was in the league. And it's a matter, I suppose, Jack, it's a matter of Limerick, doing what they continue to do. And obviously, as a defender, hearing that all the time is fine. But you have to be at the full of your health this Sunday of all days, knowing the forwards Cork have. You just can't give Nick smell of it. And if they do, they get hurt. So I actually think if the Fingers come out on top, the game is ours.
And Matt, I put the same question to you. Who will be climbing the steps of the Hogan stand, and where will the game be won?
Well, I like Ciaran, would be expecting that Declan Hannon will be climbing the steps of the Hogan stand for the third time. I think it's this desire that's in this Limerick team. They've bought into a system, and they have bought into what John Kiley calls the process. And they're not prepared to deviate from it, and it's their hunger for more and more success. Plus the fact that over the last 3 or 4 years, they have built up. It's their third final in 4 years, and with that brings a certain level of experience, the type of thing that you can't buy. Cork will have 2 players, I expect, in the starting lineout, who have experienced All-Ireland final day before, Patrick Horgan and Seamus Hannity back in 2013. Every one of the Limerick players will have been there. Experience is very, very vital. And I'm going for Limerick, but I'm going for Limerick to win, but not to run away with it. Or I think this game could be in the melting pot right up to too long for us to make it a difficult afternoon for us in Croke Park. But I think Limerick will just about shade it.
Yeah, I think as it's getting closer, it kind of seems like it is going to be a closer game. But I'll give a vote to Limerick. It's 3 votes here from us. We've 51 minutes on the clock. I think we'll leave it there, lads. Again, many pleasures for joining us.
Jack, can I just make one point?
You can, of course.
And to be fair, since they're on their journey since 2018 to now, I would have overlapped a few of them on various occasions. And to be fair to them, and there is pressure on them, okay, and they are winning All-Ireland medals, and they are out there, and they're big stars. But how they've carried themselves in the last number of years, right, has been absolutely exemplary. Every one of them to the man. They know what it means to kind of be responsible on the field. That's a given. And they also, know what it's like to be responsible off the field and how to carry yourself. And that's extremely special in a whole squad. And they have done that flawlessly for the last number of years, I have to say, and I've met a few of them, and I didn't kind of sense any airs of grace to see or kind of pigeon chest gone out. I'd have to say, like, they win in a humble fashion, and they keep their feet in the ground. And I think it's important that point is made, because they're a super bunch. And, when you have that character within a squad, it's a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly agree more. Absolutely. They're the same boys that set out on this great odyssey back in 2017, 2018. They haven't changed one iota. Success and the level of success and the barriers they have broken down, the legacy that they're leaving after them, they're not thinking about it. They're actually the same players that, the same individuals, carry themselves excellently on the field. And as Ciaran says, they carry themselves equally as well off the field. Like they're a credit to themselves. They're a credit to our group or to our county, and they're certainly a credit to the game of hurling and to their families and everybody connected with them. I think it's something well done, Ciaran, for finishing on that note, because I think it's something that has to be said, because. And they're the same lads that started off 4 years ago, unchanged. It hasn't one bit gone to their heads.
Yeah, Donald O'Grady in his pre-match, said that they're a special bunch and they're an elite bunch. And look, they are, and please God, they'll make it 3 and 4 years. But again, many thanks to you lads for joining me. Please God, we'll be back next week to celebrate another All-Ireland title. But in the meantime, we'll leave you with Ciaran Carey's score again. I'm sure he's sick and tired of seeing it, but hopefully on Sunday, Ciaran, we'll have new videos to show. So many thanks, lads, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, Jack. Thanks, Jack.
Okay,
Thanks. Again, we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as
Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there